Less than 2 weeks until the wedding. The money I'd painstakingly saved for the reception and to rent a wedding dress had vanished. I was so distraught that I almost jumped into the river, only to discover that my fiancé, David Miller, had taken the money to buy his dream girl, Ashley Carter, a gold necklace. In front of the jewelry store, I tearfully confronted him. David Miller, I wouldn't even ask you for an engagement ring. Why would you spend all our money on a necklace for Ashley Carter? Before David Miller could answer, a drive-by robbery occurred. The next second, he pushed me out to take the hit, all to protect the gold necklace in his hand. I took 3 knife wounds and was in emergency surgery for 5 hours before they saved my life. The first thing I did when I woke up in the hospital bed was call Jennifer. I'm heading south to join the Atlanta-based corporation. I want to give it a shot. After I called Jennifer, she agreed immediately. I breathed a sigh of relief and returned to the hospital room. As soon as I entered, David Miller was frowning, looking coldly at me as I clutched my stomach, my face pale. It's just a minor surgery. Who are you putting on this pitiful act for? Aren't you annoyed that you are deliberately trying to upset Ash and me? David Miller immediately bombarded me with a barrage of questions. I looked at him without saying a word. 3 knives straight into my abdomen, one of them missing my liver by a millimeter. As a doctor, he knew better than anyone how serious my injuries were, but he dismissed them as minor. My childhood sweetheart, David Miller, who used to worry about the smallest cut on my hand, had changed. I should have seen it sooner. Nurse Emily couldn't bear it and came over to help me. Dr. Miller is just too worried about you, that's why he's being harsh. You must be in a lot of pain after your stitches. I'll get you 2 painkillers later. I was about to nod and thank her when David Miller answered for me. No need, she doesn't need them. Even a dog deserves these pills more than she does. Nurse Emily, please leave us. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look and left. David Miller glanced sideways and handed me a bag. Inside was a dress. I bought you this dress as compensation. Now that you have it, you can't make trouble for Ash or spread rumors about her. I almost laughed when I saw the dress. No wonder Dr. Miller, who was supposed to be in another hospital room comforting the overly frightened Ashley Carter, suddenly came to my hospital room. I thought he had a pang of conscience, but it turned out he was here to shut me up because he was afraid Ashley Carter would be hurt in the slightest. I looked down at the dress. It was the one Ashley Carter had rejected. Ashley Carter had bragged to me about it. David specially asked his friends in New York to bring me a dress, but I didn't like the color, so I didn't want it. I told him I wanted a gold necklace. I clenched my fingers as I looked at the dress. If this had been me in the past, with my fiery temper, I would have questioned David Miller, cried, and gone crazy. But this time, I looked at the dress and nodded. Thank you for the dress. Don't worry, I won't make trouble for Ashley Carter. David Miller smiled at me, pleased that I was being so understanding for once. He reached out to take my hand and be intimate with me, as he used to. When we were secretly dating and at our sweetest, David Miller loved to hold my hand. He told me, Summer, holding your hand makes me feel so at peace. I want to hold your hand forever and never let go. And I felt so sweet every time he took my hand. I always felt that David Miller loved me the most at that moment. But this time, when he reached for me, I subconsciously avoided him. Seeing David Miller frown, I said softly, the knife not only went into my abdomen, but also cut my hand. It hurts a little. A guilty look flashed across David Miller's eyes. He smiled at me. ND said after a long silence. You rest well, I don't have night duty tonight, I'll stay with you. Before he could finish, Ashley Carter's best friend rushed into the hospital room. Dr. Miller, Ashley Carter is crying again because she was frightened by the robber. You have to go and comfort her. As soon as David Miller heard Ashley Carter crying, he frowned and looked at me. Olivia Smith, Ash is scared. I can't be with you tonight. I have to go be with her. Don't make a fuss. David Miller was about to give me a long explanation as usual. I interrupted him directly. Go ahead. David Miller looked at me suspiciously when he heard me say that. I forced a smile. In the past, Ashley Carter would pretend to be pitiful and call David Miller away every time I needed him the most. And every time David Miller chose Ashley Carter, I would stubbornly refuse to let him go. I wanted to prove that my childhood sweetheart, David Miller, loved me, so I would pester him. But I wouldn't anymore. I repeated to David Miller again, "Go ahead." David Miller didn't think much of it, nodded, and left without looking back. David Miller and I were childhood sweethearts. Our parents were co-workers. David Miller and I grew up together since we were 3 years old. Elementary school, middle school, high school, we spent the most important times of our lives together. Later, we even went to college together. Naturally, we got together and started secretly dating. But everything changed after college. His eyes were gradually drawn to Ashley Carter, a girl in his year whose parents had both passed away. At first, David Miller helped Ashley Carter out of pity, but later it changed. He began to protect Ashley Carter in every way, buying her clothes, helping her pay her tuition, giving her gifts. And every time I argued with him, he would say, "I just feel sorry for her, don't overthink it. We're all classmates, can't you be so petty?" After graduation, David Miller was assigned a rural county hospital as a doctor. And I got a chance to stay at Albany University as a teacher. But I refused because I was afraid that a long-distance relationship would make David Miller break up with me, so I resolutely followed David Miller to this small town. That's how David Miller's parents found out about our relationship. They immediately prepared to get us engaged. David Miller didn't disagree because Ashley Carter chose a job assigned by the school after graduation. David Miller's parents rented a house for him and me, 1 room each. Without Ashley Carter, our relationship seemed to have returned to the way it used to be. But unfortunately, I couldn't find a job in this small town, so I spent the year unemployed, revolving around David Miller every day. I worked hard to save money and prepare to marry him. But Ashley Carter came to David Miller a year later. She reappeared, saying that her workplace had fired her. To comfort her, David Miller secretly took the money I had saved for the wedding and bought Ashley Carter a gold necklace. I tearfully questioned him. He looked at me coldly. "If we don't have the money, can't we just postpone the wedding because of a lack of money? It's not like I'm not going to marry you, what's the rush? Ash is in such a terrible state. Shouldn't I take care of her since she's come to me?" And now, he pushed me out to take the hit to protect Ashley Carter's gold necklace. In his eyes, my life wasn't even worth Ashley Carter's necklace. I finally gave up. More than 10 years of companionship turned out to be nothing but a dream. I took a deep breath and opened a piece of stationery. I started writing to my parents to tell them that I wanted to call off the engagement. David Miller pushed me hard. My wounds were deep. I lay in the hospital for 2 full weeks before I could barely get out of bed. And during those 2 weeks, David Miller, who worked at this hospital, never showed up once. Colleagues at the hospital said David Miller had taken a leave of absence because of an emergency at home. Of course, I knew that was a lie. The next day, I ran into a neighbor from back home at the hospital. He looked surprised when he saw me and asked, "Olivia Smith, what are you doing in the hospital? David Miller told us that you were in a bad mood after encountering a robber, so he took you on a trip out of town and asked me to keep an eye on the house." I immediately understood that David Miller had taken Ashley Carter out to have fun. I felt a dull pain in my heart, but it quickly dissipated. I didn't care about what David Miller and Ashley Carter were doing anymore. I made up a few lies to the neighbor and smoothed things over. In this day and age, moral conduct is very important. David Miller's parents were good to me. Even if I wasn't with him, I didn't want him to lose his job because of me. I stayed in the hospital for a few more days before returning home. David Miller and I were engaged because of a verbal agreement between families. Mr. and Mrs. Miller and my parents had all contributed money to rent a house for us here. David Miller and I had been living together since graduation, but in separate rooms. When I got home, I saw a wedding photo on the table. Ashley Carter was wearing a wedding dress and snuggling up to David Miller with a happy face, while David Miller was wearing a suit and holding Ashley Carter tightly with a bright smile. I had fantasized countless times about what it would be like for David Miller and me to take wedding photos. But now there were wedding photos of him and Ashley Carter on the table. David Miller pushed the door open and saw me looking at his and Ashley Carter's wedding photos. His voice was a little guilty. "Olivia Smith, you're back? You didn't even tell me when you were discharged from the hospital. Don't think too much about the wedding photos. Ashley Carter has a friend who is a photographer, and she just took some pictures of us for our practice." I sneered at his explanation. I carefully put the wedding photos back in place and nodded. "Oh, it's okay. I know you're just playing around. They look pretty good." David Miller was choked by my words. His face turned pale, and he angrily picked up the photo from the table and turned it upside down. Then he said to me, "Olivia Smith, don't worry, wait a little longer, and I'll immediately apply for a marriage license. We'll get married soon." I nodded perfunctorily. "Okay, good." Then I went back to my room, packed a few things, and prepared to go out to buy a train ticket to Atlanta. Jennifer had already contacted Atlanta for me. The Atlanta-based corporation was giving me a corporate interview. I was excited to go out to buy a ticket. I also wanted to mail the letter I had written to my mom. David Miller saw that I was going out and rarely took the initiative to pull my arm and say, "Olivia Smith, you're not well enough to ride a bike since you're injured. Where are you going? I'll take you." I frowned and was about to refuse. There was no way I could let him know I was going to Atlanta. Ashley Carter pushed the door open and came in. "David, didn't you promise to take me shopping today? Let's go. I need something to wear to work tomorrow." David Miller immediately let go of my hand. He looked at me with some embarrassment. "I helped Ash find a support staff position at the hospital, and she needs to buy some decent clothes. I'll go with her to take a look." I sneered at him. Because there were no job opportunities in this small town, I had been unemployed for a year. Several times I asked him to use his connections to help me find a job at the hospital, but he always said coldly, "Are you annoying me? You insisted on coming with me, I don't owe you anything. Find a job yourself." Now that Ashley Carter had just come here to find him, he had already helped Ashley Carter find a job. Fortunately, I was sober now. I smiled at David Miller. "You go wit. Ashley Carter, I'm leaving." After saying that, I left without looking back. I breathed a sigh of relief when I got the ticket. As long as I passed this test, I could leave this place for good. For the day after I bought the ticket, I packed a few clothes and went to the train station. I didn't say goodbye to David Miller, and I didn't think he would care. The corporate interview wasn't difficult. I had prepared well, and it went smoothly overall. When I got the acceptance letter, the interviewer smiled and said to me, "Olivia Smith, you can start working next week. Congratulations." I burst into tears of joy as I held the acceptance letter. I immediately took the train back to Albany. I thought my mom should have replied to me. As soon as I got home, I pushed open my room and saw Ashley Carter sleeping in my bed in my pajamas. Ashley Carter saw me. She looked flustered, but smiled at me with a provocative look on her face. "Olivia Smith, David Miller said that my room will be yours from now on. What about childhood sweethearts? I just have to crook my finger and you'll get lost." I ignored Ashley Carter and walked straight out of the room. David Miller was cooking something in the kitchen. David Miller was stunned when he saw me and was about to say something. I asked him directly, "What's going on with my room?" David Miller was stunned for a moment and then said, "Ash was frightened and didn't dare to stay in the dorm alone these past few days, so I let her stay here first. The house is too small. Why don't you stay at the hotel for a few days?" David Miller said with a matter-of-fact expression. I quietly looked at David Miller for 2 seconds. Then I nodded, "I'll stay at the hotel." David Miller paused as he lifted the lid of the pot when he heard my words. He looked at me twice and then asked me as if he had just remembered something, "Where have you been these past few days? Are you running away from home? I think you're still angry about me letting you take a knife for Ashley Carter's necklace. It's just one knife wound, Do you have to make such a big deal out of it? I felt disgusted when I looked at David Miller's ferocious face. I sneered, I went out for something, I'm not making a fuss, don't worry. After saying that, I left the kitchen and kept rummaging through things in the living room with my head down. I couldn't find what I was looking for after searching around. I asked David Miller, has my mom sent me a letter recently? David Miller's ferocious face immediately became a little guilty, and his eyes flickered. Yes, she did, but I accidentally opened it. I clenched my fingers slightly and looked up to ask him, you didn't read the letter, did you? There was guilt in David Miller's eyes, but he shook his head decisively. I didn't read it. I nodded and opened the letter. My parents agreed immediately after they found out that I wanted to call off the engagement. My parents had always known about Ashley Carter's existence. They had advised me several times to leave David Miller as soon as possible, but I wouldn't listen. Now that I had finally come to my senses and was about to have a new job, my parents were naturally happy. My engagement with David Miller was originally a verbal agreement between families, and now we just need to exchange the tokens back. I heard that Mr. and Mrs. Miller were very surprised by this. They threatened to finish their work and come to Albany to punish David Miller properly and apologize to me. But my parents politely refused. At the end of the letter, my parents told me that they had sent me some money and told me to buy whatever I wanted. I searched the envelope again, but there was nothing. I looked up and asked David Miller, who was still busy in the kitchen. There was money in the envelope my parents sent me. Where did it go? Did you take it? As soon as I said that, Ashley Carter walked out of the room in her pajamas. David, is the seafood ready yet? I'm starving. It's ready, it's ready. David Miller finally came out of the kitchen at this moment, holding a small plate of seafood. Seafood was a very rare thing in this day and age. David Miller couldn't afford it with his salary at all. I clenched my fingers. David Miller carefully placed the seafood on the table and looked at Ashley Carter with a doting expression. You little glutton. The seafood is ready, eat it quickly. Then David Miller frowned and looked at me. I took the money from the envelope to buy seafood. I'll pay you back when I get my salary, don't worry. I looked at David Miller coldly. I opened my mouth, but finally closed it. I didn't have the energy to argue with him at this moment. Anyway, this was the last time he could take my things to give to Ashley Carter. I raised my eyebrows and looked at David Miller. Okay, I'll go pack my luggage. I went into the room, quickly packed my luggage, and turned around to leave. I didn't say goodbye to David Miller, who was busy peeling shrimp shells for Ashley Carter. I thought this would be the last time I would see him in my life. I thought he wouldn't send me off now. But David Miller saw that I was leaving. This time, he grabbed my hand holding the luggage and said, Wait, Olivia Smith. Wait a minute, Olivia Smith, your injury hasn't fully healed yet. I'll help you carry your luggage and take you to the hotel. My luggage was quite heavy, and I didn't want to make things difficult for myself. Finally, I nodded and said, okay. David Miller was probably feeling a little guilty about what had just happened. After he called a taxi, he kept talking in the car. Ashley Carter will only stay at home for 2 months, and then she'll leave. But don't worry, I've already applied for a marriage license. When Ashley Carter recovers and your wound has completely healed, I'll submit the marriage license. Then he looked at me and gave me a gentle smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. By the way, I asked AF Rien to buy you a wedding dress from abroad. I've also planned the reception. You'll look beautiful in this wedding dress at the wedding ceremony. I was stunned when I heard David Miller's words. I used to like Western weddings very much and wanted a wedding dress. But I only wanted to rent a wedding dress. David Miller was very impatient every time he heard me say that. Renting a wedding dress is so expensive, just buy a red dress to wear to the wedding. I didn't expect that he would ask a friend to buy me a wedding dress this time. But I didn't need it anymore. I nodded absent-mindedly. When I arrived at the hotel, I found out that the hotel was full of foreign guests these days. The staff said apologetically, if you need a place to stay urgently, there's only one small room left, but the environment is a bit bad. I went in and looked at the room. The environment of the room was not just bad, it was dilapidated and small. As soon as you entered, you could see cockroaches all over the floor. I frowned slightly at this. David Miller, who had always been slightly obsessive-compulsive, blurted out, "What a hellhole, is this a place for people to live?" Then David Miller seemed to realize something and looked at me with some embarrassment. I smiled and said to David Miller, "Thank you for bringing me here, go back early." David Miller looked at me and opened his mouth. But in the end, he just said, "Olivia Smith, bear with it here, I'll take you home in a while. I've applied for a marriage license, I'll submit it to the hospital later." I looked at David Miller like this and finally just sneered. Okay, I thought I'd tell him about canceling the engagement after I left completely. 10 days later, the day I was going to Atlanta finally arrived. The sun was shining brightly today, and the air was especially fresh. I was in a good mood, and I asked the hotel to send me a hearty breakfast. After finishing breakfast, I took my luggage and prepared to go to the train station. But I didn't expect that as soon as I walked out of the door of the hotel, I saw David Miller with a cold face and Ashley Carter crying beside him. Ashley Carter looked at me carrying a suitcase and cried, "Olivia Smith, you stole my gold necklace. Are you trying to run away?" I ignored Ashley Carter and frowned at David Miller, not knowing what was going on. David Miller sneered. "Ashley Carter's gold necklace is gone. It was on the day you packed your things and left. Give me the gold necklace now and apologize to Ash, and I won't pursue the matter." I looked at David Miller in disbelief. "David Miller, are you saying that I stole Ashley Carter's gold necklace? We grew up together, is that what I am in your heart? Are you crazy, David Miller? Even if you take a step back, don't forget that the money to buy this necklace was stolen from me. I didn't pursue the matter then, why would I steal the necklace now?" David Miller's eyes flickered when he saw me questioning him, and he didn't say anything. But at this moment, Ashley Carter grabbed my hand hard. Her voice was very loud. "Olivia Smith, I know you've always hated me, that's why you stole the gold necklace. But I like this necklace, please give it back to me. Please." Ashley Carter shouted like this, and it was at the door of the hotel. Immediately, a bunch of people came to surround us. A bunch of people pointed at me. "Oh my God. This woman is dressed like a human being, but she's a thief. Take her to the jail. Stealing a gold necklace. How dare she steal something so expensive? Wait for her to rot in jail." More and more people gathered. A look of surprise flashed in Ashley Carter's eyes. Ashley Carter wanted to ruin me completely. Even if I didn't steal anything in this day and age, as long as I was labeled as a thief, my reputation in this area would be completely ruined. But David Miller didn't stop Ashley Carter at all in the face of such a situation. "Olivia Smith, hand over the necklace now, and I won't let Ash call the police. Open the suitcase now and let me search it, and I'll know." After saying that, David Miller was about to snatch my suitcase. I grabbed the suitcase tightly. I'll say it again, I didn't steal it. I hardened my heart, "If you don't believe me, call the police." David Miller ignored what I said. He looked at me and said, "Olivia Smith, can you stop making trouble? I think you stole the necklace because you resent Ash for taking the knife for you. Hand over the necklace." After he finished speaking, he tried to snatch my suitcase again, and when he saw that I was still holding on tightly, he narrowed his eyes and scanned my abdomen, and then he punched me in the wound. "Let go." The wound was in severe pain, and I cried out and immediately let go of the suitcase. David Miller didn't look at me and opened my suitcase, and kept rummaging through it. He even flipped out my acceptance letter because he was too anxious, but he didn't even look at it and threw it aside. David Miller searched my entire suitcase, but couldn't find the necklace. Ashley Carter rolled her eyes at this moment and cried, "Maybe I made a mistake, maybe Olivia Smith hid it. Forget it, David. I'm feeling a little unwell and want to go home." David Miller immediately stepped forward to support Ashley Carter. Then he turned to me and said, "Since you didn't find it, forget it. I'm going to take Ash to the hospital now." After saying that, David Miller hugged Ashley Carter and left without looking back. leaving me standing there like a clown. The people around gradually dispersed. I sneered as I looked at David Miller's back. David Miller had successfully made me lose the last bit of affection I had for him. Now I finally had no feelings for him anymore. I threw the farewell letter in my hand into the trash can and boarded the plane to Atlanta. 9. I felt great working at the new company. I didn't have to revolve around David Miller every day. I didn't have to stay in one place because he forced me to, and I couldn't find a job. All the changes made me feel very comfortable. I received a letter from David Miller after I had been in Atlanta for 3 months. David Miller didn't know how, but he finally found out my address in Atlanta. In the letter, he first said that it was not easy to find my contact information, and that I shouldn't be so heartless and leave without saying anything. Then he apologized to me. He said that he didn't agree to cancel the engagement. He found the gold necklace in Ashley Carter's room. He misunderstood me. He said sorry to me, and also told me not to resent the knife. These were all minor things. He also said that he had specially found several layers of connections to finally help me find a hospital internship. But because my major wasn't right, I could only be a temporary worker, so he told me not to mind, and hoped that I would immediately quit my job in Atlanta and return to his side. He would let Ashley Carter move out of the house as soon as possible. Finally, he also put a few $100s in the letter. I took the money. This money was mine anyway. I also wrote him a letter. But there were only 2 words in the letter. Do not disturb. 10. I thought that David Miller would be very sensible and wouldn't bother me anymore if I replied to him like this. But David Miller didn't listen to me. He would write to me every month after that. He always repeated those words in his heart. Finally, there was a sentence that he was currently asking the hospital for leave. He would come to Atlanta to see me as soon as possible. Of course, there would be some money in the end. And when I saw these letters, I would take the money and throw the letters in the trash can. Half a year after coming to Atlanta, a colleague introduced me to a blind date. The colleague said that this blind date was a civil servant, a nice person, a graduate of a prestigious university, and quite handsome, and asked me to meet him. Anyway, I had nothing to do, so I went to meet him. This blind date's name was James Brown, and as the colleague said, all his conditions were excellent. He was also very polite to me. Finally, as we chatted, I found out that he was my high school classmate. But he only stayed in our high school for a year, so no wonder I didn't have much of an impression of him. I felt a little embarrassed about this at the dinner table. But James Brown smiled very cheerfully. Olivia Smith, although you don't have much of an impression of me, I have a very deep impression of you. On the day I entered high school in my first year, I felt dizzy and had heat stroke and fainted. You ran a long way to buy me an ice cream. I remember that day when you gave me the ice cream. You were panting and sweating all over. I didn't even have time to say thank you to you. James Brown's words revived my memory. I remembered that after buying him the ice cream, I actually wanted to send him to the school clinic, but David Miller pulled me away, so I didn't have time to say too much to him. James Brown's memories made both of us relax a lot. After dinner, James Brown took me to the bus stop. Before leaving, he said to me, "I hope we can get along happily and be friends in the future." I had a good impression of James Brown after that day, and we naturally got along like that. After getting along, I found that James Brown and I had many common hobbies. We would like the same book and the same movie. We always had endless topics to talk about. Even when I was with my childhood sweetheart, David Miller, we didn't have so many common topics. Slowly, we naturally became boyfriend and girlfriend. Here, my love life flourished, and my career took off as well. Not only was I promoted at the workplace, but I also had the opportunity to buy the latest stocks issued in Miami during a business trip there. James Brown bought them with me. Unexpectedly, the stocks made us a fortune. As a result, James Brown and I quickly bought houses and cars in Atlanta. I got an Atlanta residency. The double harvest of love and career made me gradually forget about David Miller completely. It was as if David Miller had never appeared in my memory. Another 6 months passed. James Brown proposed to me. James Brown gave me an elaborate proposal ceremony. And on the day of the proposal, he also told me a secret. Summer, I've had a crush on you since high school. It's just a pity that you had your childhood sweetheart, David Miller, by your side at that time, and I didn't dare to confess to you. Now God has allowed us to meet and fall in love again. I hope you can give me a chance. James Brown looked at me with extremely sincere eyes. I looked at James Brown's eyes and recalled the bits and pieces of our time together, and finally nodded. Next, we were busy preparing for the Western wedding, meeting the parents, and buying gifts. After my parents came to Atlanta, they were very satisfied with James Brown and his music. They looked at me with relief and said, "My daughter should be matched with such a good man. Those awful people in the past didn't have the fortune to marry you." I've cut off contact with those awful people's parents. Everyone in our family hates who my daughter hates. Seeing my parents so happy, I felt even more that my decision was right. In the following days, James Brown and I were extremely busy every day. But just 1 week before our wedding, David Miller showed up. It had been almost a year since I last saw David Miller, and he seemed like a different person. At this moment, he was gaunt and haggard. I had already heard the latest news about David Miller from friends. David Miller caused a stir at the hotel by standing up for Ashley Carter and saying that I stole her gold necklace. Our conversation was heard by many people. Ashley Carter thought it would make me suffer, but she didn't expect me to disappear completely. This fire Eve Tully burned her and David Miller. Before long, everyone pieced together the whole story. Those gossipy people spread the word far and wide. In the end, the truth everyone got was that David Miller used my money to buy a gold necklace for Ashley Carter, and then not only kicked me, his fiancé, out of the house, but also falsely accused me of stealing Ashley Carter's gold necklace. This matter eventually spread to David Miller's workplace. Although Ashley Carter claimed that David Miller and I had broken off our engagement, David Miller denied it. And the hospital was already highly competitive, and this era valued reputation the most. So David Miller was directly marginalized at the hospital. And Ashley Carter, who was brought in by David Miller through connections to work in a support staff position, was directly fired. Ashley Carter cried and begged David Miller to marry her. But David Miller kicked Ashley Carter out of his house. But how could Ashley Carter let him go? Now the two of them were in a complete mess. I heard that David Miller had become the biggest joke in the whole of hometown. That's why David Miller hadn't bothered me for so long. Now he had come looking for me, which surprised me very much. David Miller was still wearing a sweater that I knitted for him today. I remember knitting this sweater for a whole month, and it was a birthday gift I gave to David Miller. But at that time, David Miller had already become friends with Ashley Carter, and he had never worn the sweater I gave him. I didn't expect him to wear it to see me this time. But so what? David Miller looked at me with joy and said, "Summer, I can finally see you." His voice was a little trembling and a little cautious, but I saw no expression on his face. I looked at him with a sneer. "I remember I told you in the farewell letter not to bother me. You paid back the money, and the engagement is off. I don't know what you want from me?" David Miller was not angry at all at my cold attitude. He reached out to me, but in the end, he didn't dare to hold my hand and said, "I know I was a bit out of line before. But Summer, can't you forgive me after so long? I've broken up with Ashley Carter. For the sake of our many years as childhood sweetheart, please forgive me one more time. Let's get back together and get married right away, okay? Don't worry, I'll pay for the wedding this time." After so long, David Miller finally said what I had always wanted to hear. But hearing these words now only made me feel disgusted. I frowned in disgust and took a step back. Then I sneered. "David Miller, how shameless can you be to say these things? Why should I give up everything and go back with you? In the past, I was willing to give up the job assigned by the school and accompany you to the place you wanted to go with nothing because I loved you. In the end, I even became a stay-at-home wife, taking care of you and revolving around you every day. But now, I touched the car behind me. Now I have a residency, a house, and a car in this city. What makes you think I would give up all this and go back with you? David Miller's face turned pale as paper when he heard my words. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but I interrupted him directly. There's one more thing I want to tell you. I'm getting married soon. David Miller's face turned even paler when he heard me say that. But he didn't believe what I said. He said to me, "Summer, don't joke around." "Summer." A voice interrupted David Miller's words in the next second. My fiancé, James Brown, appeared behind me. James Brown took my hand and looked at David Miller with a deep gaze. I immediately reciprocated and held James Brown's hand, smiling as I looked at David Miller. "This is my fiancé, James Brown. We're getting married soon. The Western wedding is next month." David Miller finally believed what I said when he saw our intertwined hands. His voice was even more trembling than before. He looked at me in disbelief. "Summer, how can you get married? How can you marry someone else? No, it's impossible, it hasn't been that long, you must be lying to me." Then, as if he thought of something, he stared at James Brown and said, "You're James Brown, right? Do you know what relationship Summer and I have? She and I are childhood sweethearts, we were once engaged." I looked at James Brown with some worry. I haven't told him about David Miller and me yet. But before David Miller could finish the last word, James Brown interrupted him directly. James Brown's voice was extremely cold. "So what? You hurt her badly before, and she doesn't love you now. If I were you, I'd get lost." Looking at James Brown at this moment, I knew I had chosen the right person. I took James Brown's hand and didn't look at David Miller, only saying to James Brown, let's go home." I thought that after this, David Miller would no longer have the face to bother me. But I didn't expect David Miller to start haunting me after that day. He followed me every day, looking at me with a sad expression. Whenever he could find time to approach me, he would say to me, "Summer, I was wrong, please give me another chance, okay? As long as you forgive me, I'll immediately submit my resignation report to the hospital, and I'll come to Atlanta to be with you. This time, I'm willing to give up my job for you. I can stay at home and take care of you. We've been together for so many years, it can't just end like this, it can't just end like this." And when I faced such a David Miller, I would only reply to him with one word, "Get lost." After I don't know how many times I told David Miller to get lost, David Miller finally gave up. He never appeared in my sight again, and my Western wedding was held as scheduled. I was about to become the happiest bride in the world. At the wedding ceremony, James Brown confessed his love to me and we exchanged rings. We received the blessings of lives and friends. Everything was so dreamlike, and everything was developing in a happy direction. But just as the Western wedding was halfway through, a figure suddenly rushed out. "You bitch, you ruined my life, go to hell." It was Ashley Carter. Ashley Carter rushed towards me with a knife. Ashley Carter's speed was extremely fast, and everyone was stunned. James Brown, who was being offered a cigarette by friends not far away, wanted to rush over and push me away. He shouted at me, "Be careful, Summer." But he was too far away to rush over in time. I closed my eyes. I thought I would be stabbed again this time. But the pain I imagined didn't come. A figure blocked the knife for me. It was David Miller. David Miller secretly hid in the crowd to watch my Western wedding. David Miller hugged me and blocked Ashley Carter's knife with his body. As he fell, he said softly to me, "This time, I finally didn't let her hurt you again." The knife that Ashley Carter stabbed was very heavy, much heavier than the last time I was stabbed. This knife pierced David Miller's abdomen severely, injuring his internal organs. David Miller was in the hospital for 5 hours before he was rescued. And out of humanitarianism, I went to see him in the hospital room. In the hospital room, David Miller looked at me weakly and said, "I'm a doctor, I know it hurts to be stabbed, but I didn't expect it to hurt so much. I finally know how much you must have hated me when I asked you to block the knife for Ashley Carter and protect that gold necklace. Summer, it's right for you to never forgive me in this life. It's all my fault. I was wrong, terribly wrong. I ruined our many years of childhood sweetheart relationship. David Miller's pale face suddenly burst into tears. I looked at him like this without saying a word. Even if he blocked a knife for me now, the harm he had done to me before was indelible. I wouldn't be soft-hearted because of this. David Miller cried for a while and started coughing desperately. I got up and poured him a glass of water. He took a sip, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Summer, I'm sorry. I've only loved you in this life, but I don't know why I started hurting you constantly after Ashley Carter appeared. At first, I just felt sorry for Ashley Carter, and then he paused. I'm sorry, Summer. I regret it now. Can you forgive me? David Miller stared at me motionlessly, as if I were the last straw in his life, as if my forgiveness would completely free him. But I looked at him for a long time and finally left without saying anything. Later, I heard that Ashley Carter was arrested after stabbing David Miller. Ashley Carter was probably going to spend the rest of her life in jail. And David Miller has suffered from a severe illness since then. He resigned from the hospital and returned to his hometown. His parents kept urging him to find a girl from the same village to marry, but he refused. Later, his parents were afraid of losing face and took him to move to another place. And my married life was naturally very happy. James Brown treated me with utmost care, and soon we gave birth to twins. After having twins, my life became even more colorful. Living with the one I love, I felt that the air I breathed every day was filled with happiness. One day later, I received a package from a remote small town. The sender was David Miller. I was stunned when I saw this package. At this time, the twins shouted behind me, "Mom! Mom!" After hearing this, I threw the package into the trash can and immediately responded, "Coming." The end.